Okay, good morning and welcome to day 5, the final day of Birmingham Tech Week 2020. And what a week it's been. It's been incredible to see so many people come out in full force to support tech, innovation and digital across our wonderful city and region. And Kim and I had a chance to catch up with the Mayor of the West Midlands this morning. And it was a great message from Andy Street about the resilience he's seen across the region, but how tech will underpin the economic recovery, but also the growth as well, and some exciting projects both in the pipeline, but also being launched as we speak. And today, of course, we're going to be speaking about an entrepreneurial journey and the power of thinking differently. We've got the wonderful Joseph Daniels, who's the CEO and founder of Etopia, a wonderful organization you're going to hear loads more about very shortly. And I can't wait for Kim to introduce him to you. And of course, the week is being run in association with 3 wonderful partners, Tech Nation, West Midlands Growth Company and Department for International Trade. Great work they do across the entire region, the UK, but also internationally to promote Birmingham and West Midlands businesses and helping organisations export effectively and encouraging inward investment. And of course, later on, 11:30 keynote, we're going to hear from the West Midlands Growth Company about some exciting opportunities for businesses to get involved in around HS2, 5G, and of course, the Commonwealth Games as well. So very exciting time for our region and to be involved in it. And of course, the week wouldn't be possible without our wonderful sponsors. Big shout out to NatWest, who are our lead and headline sponsor for the amazing work they do across the UK and in Birmingham around their Entrepreneur Accelerator, supporting loads of founders and entrepreneurs on their journey. And Copper, Culture Group, BJSS, Sidetrade and BMET for the great work they do in tech and also supporting the wider community as well. And of course, the week wouldn't be possible without the support of our partners. I'm going to give a shout out this morning to a couple of people, actually, Steamhouse for all the work they do, helping people innovate, but also DCMS for being supporters of ours. We've got a special message from Captain later on, which we can't wait to show everyone. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to our host for today. It's the one and only Kim Leary, who's, of course, the CEO and founder of branding agency Squibble, but also the chair of Birmingham Tech and Birmingham Tech Week. So it gives me great privilege to hand over to Kim now.
Thank you, Yanis. I absolutely cannot wait to hear from Joseph. He founded Project Etopia in 2015. At the very young age of 23, and is the CEO of Project Etopia Group. Motivated with a passion to make a difference, his objective is to build the smart, connected eco-cities of the future that work towards solving the global housing crisis, whilst having a positive impact on climate change. He aims to do this by combining various energy, construction and intelligent technologies through invention or collaboration to build the highest performing buildings. His ambition was fueled by a lack of security that he faced as a young man and continues to drive his motivation to create a better tomorrow. Joe has been recognised across various industries for his innovative approach to technology and real estate. Most recently, he received the accolade of Forbes 30 Under 30 in the manufacturing and industry category, as well as an upcoming feature in the United Nations 75th anniversary book for his contribution to climate change. I, for one, am so excited to hear from you, Joseph. So I'm going to hand over to you straight away because I'm keen to get going. Thank you. Oh, just need to take your mic off.
Hey, great mistake. The way it lives now in the COVID world. No, so thank you so much for having me to talk about a topic of conversation which is quite important to me. Maybe going to start this in a bit of a questionable way, but you know, how many of us walk past a homeless person every day? How many of us actually know someone or know a friend or a niece, nephew, colleague that has, you know, or is close to someone that has been homeless? And believe it or not, only 8 years ago, I was still in that homeless period of my life, that homelessness. At the age of 15 years old, my alcoholic, abusive father finally left, which caused my mum to have a mental breakdown. She was then sectioned, and this led to me becoming homeless at 15 years old. Between the ages of 15 and 21, I sat in what we call a first world. We'll call it a first world. But yet you could walk down Bishopsgate right now and see someone holding out a cup, asking you for their change. And people walk past them blatantly, even though they're on hundreds of thousands of pounds a year at this massive ivory tower. And that's not to make us think that, economics doesn't work. It does. It spins the world. But also just as importantly is that we have to understand what kind of impact this has. Why do we have homelessness in this first world? And this led me onto a journey. So after having these hardships and actually being homeless on and off the streets, involved in a lot of different things, which if anyone knows anyone with any experience living on the streets, is not the easiest of lives in terms of you can't just get money and get a job. You have to figure out a way to survive. And at 21, I had a suicide attempt. I took 36 Cocodamol and a half bottle of vodka, and I went to sleep crying to myself. Why did I do that? I felt there was nothing left. I felt there was nowhere left to go. I woke up around about 3 or 4 a.m. vomiting all over myself. And my friend, who at the time was in the Royal Anglian, he was actually in the army. And why did I bring him over? Because I thought he'd be able to deal with it. He would grab me, drag me over the toilet, force his fingers down my throat. What are you doing, you idiot? And this was the point where I decided that I was going to try and do something. I said, as cold as a message was, it was like, if I couldn't kill myself, then I best do something with this life I've been given. From the ages of 21 until around about 23, I come up with an idea. And that idea was that I'm going to go on a single man journey, and I'm going to stop homelessness, and I'm going to build things better. And we're not a first world. And how could I have lived in these halfway houses? And how could I have lived in these concrete boxes with mold? And how is it really on the other side of the planet? So I got some basic work in designing some websites, which I'd learned to do online. I got a 10 grand loan, which I shouldn't have got. And I took my ass with a backpack to 2 places. One, I flew into Jiangsu, which is in China. The Jiangsu province in China is on the Yangtze River. Now, that's where you'll see places like Shanghai, Nanjing. But what's really important to know is that a piece of technology, no matter what piece of technology you're holding, at some point or another, some piece in this device or this device has touched Jiangsu. So I was really like, okay, well, how do I understand technology? And then after doing that, which was not easy, I could not speak Chinese, Mandarin at all. I was like, okay, where else can I go? So I went to sub-Saharan Africa to see what poverty is really like. So what I was trying to do in my mind was like, how do I understand these things? How do I understand where technology comes from? How am I going to change the world? I've got these ideas. And then, what's it really like? I was homeless in the UK. I'm a boy from North London and moved out to Essex. Ain't that bad. And then you kind of go to Katatura, which is a shanty town in Namibia, and you really start to see what it's really like. And so that led me to developing, again, this philosophy of Utopia. Utopia is, I'll come on to what exactly it does and deliver, but it was originally derived from a philosophy. And what I'll do is I'll share some screens with you. I'll share some slides with you and talk you through what really is Utopia. And so Etopia is about combining an economic and environmental ideology to create a utopia of the future. Now, we understand utopias don't exist. If they did, I wouldn't have been homeless, and I imagine tons of other people wouldn't be in a situation. But the reality is we live where we live, and a utopia isn't really feasible. However, if we can look at economics and we can look at environment, we can really start to understand what goes into them. So my idea was, okay, well, look, if you can make it affordable and you can make it scalable, like so localize it anywhere, make sure everyone get access to one no matter where you are, that's economics. And environment, well, if I make it sustainable, circular economy, how do I make all this tech, how do I make these things combine? where actually I can reuse recycled materials? Or how do I, not use any energy over its lifetime, pay its carbon debt? And then the actual final one is social versatility. So how do I make it so everyone wants one? How do I make it so everyone can buy their own effectively phone case for it? And that led to what Etopia is now today. And to break down in a single page, which my amazing brand team, as you guys just picked up on, we've got some top of the game marketing brand team, I've broken down beautifully. So Etopia at the forefront of inventing all-in-one solutions for a more sustainable, efficient, affordable, and a resilient approach to house building. In addition to that, once you build houses, you can use those same contexts to build schools and scale it up. And we can build community centers. So the building blocks of our life and these eco cities of the future are going to be made up by houses, people living and people using, and commercial units. Now with COVID, as you can imagine, homes are more important than ever. We're spending more time inside our homes and make sure they're adaptable. And then you've got, like, I've been through the why, right? I just said, here's my experiences. 3 billion people will need new housing and basic urban infrastructure or services by 2030. And apart from these stats, there's currently 2 billion people living in substandard accommodation or poverty. So we mentioned Equitec, right? We are an economic and environmental building solution, but that has made us an Equitec company. So what's really awesome is that somehow I managed to carve out my own sector, because we're not prop tech, we're not property tech. We don't just build properties, and we're not, fintech. We don't do financial services. There's so many different languages, and we were like, okay, well, what do we do? We're Equitec. What I did was I combined energy, construction, and IoT. So I looked at energy in its production, in its storage, and its usage. How do I make these, organs of this building? Then we worked in construction programs and how do you build super buildings? So then we developed a construction hyper technology, like a hyper brick. And then what you've got is kind of this amazing exoskeleton that's flood proof and hurricane proof. You've got these technology inside it, this energy technology, which takes the air and then using gases, it exchanges it and it ventilates it. So you've got this kind of working in harmony. And then the final piece is, well, actually, we don't actually know how we use buildings. So the future cities are going to need to understand that. And so we developed an IoT device. And we're working heavily with Samsung on that. But what it led to was that all of this talk and all this craziness of me applying change, I'd now done something that hadn't really been done before. What I'd done is I'd taken electronics and architecture electronics, I'd taken construction material, and I've taken energy, the hardest markets in the world, right? In my intelligence space, we got Samsung, great, thank God they're our partners. We got Amazon, Apple. This is not a small playground that you're playing in here. You've got construction, it hasn't changed in hundreds of years. And you've got energy, one of the biggest well-known monopolies. So not only now had I taken all these things and made them one, and shipped one off to Africa, built one with 6 locals from a shanty town, and I'll show you a bit more of that in a minute. But now what I had is I had a product that's going to really could disrupt a lot of sectors. I've now got a house that doesn't depend on any energy because it's energy positive. It pays its carbon debt, so it meets all the criteria. It's got IoT, so everyone's technology that they're using at home, that their own device, needs to embed in it. And then you're taking on construction, and damn, is construction one of the hardest things to break into. There's a reason there's no startups in construction. And so when it comes to it, we can break down what these products do, but I think it's more important to talk about how the effects that this has had and how many barriers I've had to overcome, but more importantly, what you have to apply to achieve these things. They are possible. It seems impossible. But our house, for example, broke the EPC mold. 103 out of 100. They designed it to be 100. We broke it. Then they're 0, paying their own carbon debt back. Our houses are the equivalent of taking a Boeing 737 out of the sky for 1,861 hours. So I focused all of this thought knowledge, all these thoughts in my head, all these different things. I went online. I learned things. I've got an online degree in thermodynamics, architecture, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, gaming design, web design, Why? Because it was there. I had that knowledge to know. I really took it. I took all I could because I had nothing and no resources. I wasn't academic. Turns out, you know, the reason I wasn't great at school was because I can learn really fast and it makes me disruptive. But as you go on your journey in life, you start to realize that these things have benefits where you're not taught to learn a singular way. You're taught to learn in different ways. The speed of these things, they go up in literally moments. I trained 6 locals, as I said, from a shanty town, and we built a 2-bedroom house unit, superstructure in 3 hours. These guys couldn't use a drill. And then obviously I've mentioned the intelligence, but what intelligence means is it means harmonization. When you live in something, you breathe it, right? So it's about harmonizing. It's about understanding what the impact is on there, because all these companies, and I think one of the reasons that the construction industry is stagnating so hard, and I think why it's so aged, is because they don't think about you afterwards. And, you know, post-product services now are really important to us in the tech world because our tech falls apart. So it's overcoming those questions, yeah, of like, what is there? How do I do it? Go do that first. Then you're going to, like, there's going to be loads of problems. And then you have to explain why you're here. Why are you servicing these problems? Why are you different? Why are you making change? Why are we making change? What makes you so special? And you haven't got to have a backstory that goes on about all our shit, but it could be an idea that you care about, or it could be something that you know, in today's world, in a tech world, money's not enough. I think it's important to recognize. And I think that's really important that we start to understand more and more that it's not around just money. You know, if you come up with an idea in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, you're probably going to find an oil well as your best thing. But today we're developing technology that create a better planet for us, because the world, unfortunately, and I don't want to point out because we keep doing it, but it's on fire, right? And so with Utopia, I'd broken the mold on something from such a singular experience on this tiny little continent here and this tiny little dot. And I flew my ass all the way down to Africa on a plane. And now we've got a building in Kuwait. And now, you know, we're working with the state of New York to outline some developments there for affordable housing. And so what it did is it really, this tiny idea from this suffering experience and from this pain and hardship has now led into literally a building system that's providing a better life for people at a more affordable cost. It's servicing those people for a very long time. But on the back of it as well, it's effectively reversing climate change if you put normal building in its place. And I think what is amazing now is that we have something to look at. I think when I don't know if there's any entrepreneurs watching now, but over the last like 5 or 10 years, if you're in a sustainable space, or you're in the space where your tech is for good, or your tech is doing a different practice or something unique, there's no benchmark. You know, there's this kind of like, yeah, what's your P&L look like? What's your revenue stream look like? Yeah, you're going to take on, how much money are you going to make me in 5 years? That's what it's all been about. Now we've got these sustainable development goals. We're actually becoming their own currency. It's kind of like, actually, no, you know, how many jobs are you creating? Are you supporting innovation infrastructure? Is this building sustainable cities of the future? Are you reducing poverty? Is there good health? Like, now we have a metrics that allows us to look at things in a unique way. And if anyone's thinking about doing or their own thing or setting up, but their concern has been like, maybe I can't build a company because this idea might not be profitable. It's more, you know, it's closer to the line than it. But don't forget now that we are finally recognizing some social goals, and we're actually looking at that and going, okay, how do the world benchmark these issues, and how does the world value these things? And so that is my introductory piece for now. And I'm going to share with you just a little video that is just going to, you know, summarize the journey that I've been on over the course of the last, 4 or 5 years now, maybe longer. Damn, time goes so fast. I'm 28. Ooh. Utopia was an idea in 2014 to change the way we live. And after spending over 4 years developing this idea, all the hard work came off in the form of our first project, deploying a smart eco-school extension in Essex in the summer of 2018. Then at the end of that year, we acquired our first site in Corby, which is now one of the world's highest performing building developments. In 2019, we established our first international build system
building a prototype to replace shanty towns in Namibia, and creating the first truly globalized, energy positive, smart build system. At the end of 2019, we visited Kuwait to plan our first project in the Middle East, with us breaking ground at the beginning of 2020. Having already developed plans and designs for the US, our next target is to have a build system built in the United States by the end of 2020. And having already met government in India and BRE in China, we're expecting to have our first systems out in Asia in 2021. Etopia is already on its way to being the first truly global smart eco developer, and with a planned presence on 5 continents within 2021, we'll be well on our way to building the smart connected cities of the future.
And what's really cool about that is that actually all of that footage you saw was a videographer and good close friend of mine coming and filming all this, and we filmed a documentary about Namibia, and I go to a shanty town and I actually caught E. coli. I actually went into the shanty town and they were like, dude, you're insane. Yeah, you're this boy from London. Do not to go into Catatonia shanty town. Don't do it. And I was like, no, because I need to understand what the story is going to be. And so I took myself in there, and then, yeah, there's a bit on the video. You actually watch myself go like this on my beard, and I'm like, that's when you got E. coli, my friend. And then the next 2 weeks were horrendous. But if anything, it shows you that you can break down barriers. I think if you think about what made us as Homo sapiens species evolve, it was the ability to tell stories. It was that ability to communicate outside of the norm, you know. And what we're able to now do is create our own journeys. And as long as those journeys are what people believe in, and I believe as long as they're good for the planet, I think everyone's on that mindset now, rather than being on the, you know, economic profitability, you know, or other type cost views. It's now about collectiveness and togetherness.
So can I ask, do you think that the scenario with COVID that we have now, do you think that that has accelerated people's view on sustainability and kind of social welfare? Do you think it's had a positive impact?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think, you know, the ability we once took for granted, which is simple things like going to the shops, and then you sit there and you're sat behind a screen and you're watching the world from afar, you know, fall apart in a way. And you're watching riots, and there's, you know, a lot of incredible moves like the BLM movement, which, you know, it makes you think I think what the thing we're looking at now is, are we insane? Have we been ignoring these things for like 40 years? Like, you see the BLM movement and you're like, what? How on earth is it 2020?
Yeah.
The right to vote was in the 1960s. How is this still? And I think what it's done, we're all sitting down now a lot behind our computers, and we can't go out, we can't ignore things. You know, you can't just go and do your activities. It's making you consider a lot more. And people are going, there is a lot wrong here. There's a lot we have ignored over the past 35, 40 years that we didn't even realize there's this systemic control over things. And I think now we're finally able to go, damn, you know, it could happen. The world could end. Like, it's not a million miles away. The world could end. And for a lot of people, it has. COVID has taken a lot of lives. And so I think now it's making us think more inwardly about the decisions we make.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. I think the pictures that were released of the impact that climate change has had from the beginning of lockdown, and kind of the water starting to clear and populations coming back, it's had a huge positive impact. And certainly from my point of view, I've absolutely been thinking about changes that I can make and what I'll start to do in the future. Mm-hmm. From a digital transformation point of view, there's so many companies that have started to really tighten up their processes, think about traveling less, or what more can they do to reduce their carbon footprint. So
yeah, and I think offset as well. A lot of people are now looking at, how do I offset? How do I quantify and measure my actions in a more thoughtful way? You know, what about the bag I buy from Tesco's? And, you know, and I think there's been signs of it. Like the 5p bag tax wasn't because of we want to tax you more. You get a lot of that. It's like, no, dude, like, they can't throw them away. They got landfill. And I think if if there was a bit of more transparency as well around the problems that we have. But you remember, like, how are you going to elect the government if they're constantly pointing out problems? But for me, it's like, well, if they were pointing out the problems, then we might all come up with solutions rather than hiding the problems in taxation and programs and little bits here and there, and this, the reaction of the government. And I think you can be any side of this. I think it's an impossible task, but the reactions have shown that people feel lost, they feel misunderstood, and they're not being transparent with numbers sometimes. Because would you be transparent in numbers if you thought everyone under the age of 35 was going to be like, all right, cool, don't worry about it? Of course, you've got an obligation to protect so many different things, but maybe if they'd have been transparent with us as a community in general over a longer period of time, over the past 10 years, then we would be more willing and easily to accept these things. And I think from a political landscape as well, it's going to change a lot. It's going to change a lot. And a lot of policy is changing in a lot of ways and things. And they say digitization taking a big part. Why are we still drawing? This is insane, right? So two things are overcoming hurdles. I plan all my stuff in like a gaming engine, right? So it's just the way I know. Like, I'm like, I built the buildings, okay, cool, in the computer. Now I've performed them. So why don't I put that on like a geo landscape on Google Map and paint some trees around it? You can't submit that to planning. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? They're like, yeah, but you have to draw a 2D map. It's like, yeah, but we have to go off the rules in 1974. Yes, that's when the planning, that's the original. And I'm like, no, I get that. And then local play areas are trying to change that and they're trying to bring it to life. And then you go, okay, well, I'm able to build out of this new material. And they're like, yeah. There's no warranty. I'm like, what do you mean there's no warranty? It's been tested to a hurricane. Like I
wanted to ask you is from the construction point of view, how, like, just tell me more about how that started. How do you go in and say, we're going to look at some new materials? Where does that conversation in your head even begin?
I think it starts with how on earth are we still building out of the same thing that the Romans were building out of? Like, it's limestone concrete the Romans were building out of. And I think we've just ignored the question because there has been a monopoly. If you look in 1950s to especially 1970s, then breaking into even early the 1990s in America, there was a monopoly on construction for concrete by the mafia. It's not, construction has always been, because of frameworks and because of the sheer workload, a way that people can control it. That people with power, it's very easy to control an industry that's so large. Why? Because no one's going to turn up and say, well, here's a 2,000 people workforce to do this project over there. So at first it's looking at like what was there, and then saying, well, how do you change a principal piece of that in such a way that it creates a new dynamic which makes it more open platform. So like, as an example of that, we had to go through rigorous testing. Like I've actually, so the first school I built in Brighton was one, but I actually worked on another school which was built of a glass bead system. So I was looking at, okay, well, what can do the job of a brick, but obviously not made hundreds of years ago, and has been tested and creates this better environment that uses less energy, and that eventually, hopefully, will be made of recycled materials as well. How do I look at something today and say, okay, well, that's the version and iteration. Let's get that across the line, and then I'm going to start breaking it all back down. And that was painstaking to the point, I can't go into too much details about it, but only 6 months ago, there was a warranty provider in Britain that said no to a product, and it made no sense. The rest of the world, and I'm talking the rest of the world, recognized this product. But because of a single thing that they saw and a single discussion group and a disagreement, due to the processes you have to take, because the UK is so traditional in its processes. The UK is the hardest, by the way. Like, I've got a really cool anecdote in a minute, actually. But yeah, like, so stringent. And then they go, no, not that product. And that can destroy companies. It destroys them companies. Even the spacing standards, as much as that's a human thing, you've got all these massive companies, like modular companies, I call them, they're modular building companies. They set up their production lines, and then someone comes in and goes, yeah, you can't do that anymore, without thinking about the long-term thing. And I think, to put it in summary of like how hard and how simple it was, one of the heads of the DIT called me, and they were putting me in some lookbook around clean tech. And he's like, Joe, I've got, like, we had a chat for a good few hours, chatting away, doing this. And he goes to me, Joe, can I ask a question? Like, would you mind commenting on clean tech? Because like, you're a young guy, at the end of the day, I'm 28. Yeah. And that is in construction, not like, there's no one like below the age of 50, 45, definitely not 45. And he's like, so this clean tech kind of environment, yeah, you're a young guy. Why is it so hard to get into? I went, I had to I was homeless most of my life, had to learn everything online. I raised tens and tens of millions, bought my own development, built my own unit, set up my own production line. I said I built a school. I flew to Africa, built a building before the British government gave me one. The state of New York worked with to give us a project in 6 weeks. And that shows you that the level of hurdles is also orientated around where you are, And I went for the hardest. Setting up, construction in the UK is, there's no, if you look at the top 50 builders in the country, there's no startups, apart from maybe us, but we're not even in those numbers. And so I also would like say that it's about focus areas, So how hard is it to overcome construction? Yeah, there was tons, and you just got to keep, you got the way it is. It's not going to be good. And if you haven't got to crawl through burning glass, it's not good enough. It's something you really want.
So when you kind of first started then, was there a role model, a person that you had that you kind of had set in your sights, or where did the motivation come from as well? Obviously internally, but was there somebody or something that kind of kept you going?
I think a lot of people put a lot of pressure onto a single personality. So I didn't ever have a singular one. Like Elon Musk, what amazing guy, but he's quite weird. Richard Branson, wow, what an incredible human being, but ultimately he's burning fuel and dumping it into the sky. So you've got these, do you know what I mean? There's amazing elements, Bill Gates, again, incredible human being. Again, if you read about him, the processes that he took probably aren't always the best. And, Steve Jobs, and one of the most marvelous beings in business ever, ignored his daughter for like 15 years. So I think one of our, to I suppose royalize in a word, these figures, I think it would be dangerous to, and I kind of kept that to myself, is that I'm a very unique character. I'm definitely not perfect. I'm a bit more real than a lot of these people that do go into to business at that level, because I've had these hardships. But what I tried to do is look at everyone and go, okay, well, what bits of what made them incredible can I apply to me? And I'd also say, don't stop being you. One of the biggest failings is that when you try to pretend to be somebody else, an investor may not like it, but what makes you is what will stay true for the whole time. Yeah. So you can't wear that facade for too long. And so in that 10 years, they'll know you, they'll watch you slip because you aren't being you. So my advice is be yourself and your persona, and let that evolve. Obviously, don't be stagnant, always listen and learn, but let your true character evolve, and then take the best bits that you think fit your mentality from these people. And then that will build, hopefully, the best version of yourself.
I like that. And it means that you can always stay relevant then, because you're yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's next then? Your video talked about 2021 and Asia. What does that look like for you?
The good news is that even though that video was made at the beginning, early 2021, pre-COVID, I should be in New York by the end of this month. So we should be in New York building, hopefully, either if we're starting the building and the building be built, because there's like 12 feet of snow where we're trying to build in upstate New York. But 2020 we will 100% be on ground in US, which is opening up an affordable market in the world's biggest Western market. We're looking at real true net zero affordability and how we can make impacts across the states, and working with different code providers and different architects. And in the Middle East, my building is sitting in containers waiting, but they haven't been able to open up. I've got product there. I've got foundations that have been poured. Technically, we started the product in the Middle East, and it's just sitting there. And I can't, because we have to go and make sure we train the first one. And then in 2021, some cool discussions, certain things in lockdown I can't mention, but the 7th continent in Antarctica is a venture in 2021 that's being outlined at the moment, and we will be 7 in 7 is a part of my journey. So I want to build 7 build systems, 7 continents, solving 7 world problems. And by the end of 2021, hopefully I'll be able to close off all 7 if COVID lets it up a little bit. But we should be on all 7 by the end of 2021.
That sounds really exciting. So tell me a bit more about the concept of 7-7 then. How does that work?
Yeah. So 7 in 7 was an idea, right? A part of this journey was, okay, well, look, what if this one build system, building regulations is crazy. as again, it comes through, you know, what are the hurdles, what are the barriers, and overcoming local building control is insane, right? So in some places in America, you literally have a town that's like here and like 40 miles here. Their building code is completely different for no other reason, not the building itself, but the way it looks. And it doesn't make sense. And they're like, well, you need to use these products. So what I wanted to do is I'm like, okay, what would be the ultimate goal for me? You know, so I want to build these cities, and we build thousands, and that's great. And some of them are going to be highly profitable, and some of them are going to be for, you know, replacement and regeneration. It won't be profitable, whatever. What am I going to do as an individual that's going to leave my lasting imprint? And I want to be the first person to build a net zero building solution on every continent. Be the first person to go and build something that doesn't kill the planet, that's a proof construction, that combines all my technologies, that is future-proofed on 7 continents. I started with obviously the UK's Europe, and then I went to Africa, and then we're in the Middle East, and now we're in the USA, and I'm like, well, that's 4. And then you look in, well, it depends how you look at the world as well, because there's this whole discussion around, is it, isn't it, depending on what region you go, like, is the Americas, is Australasia, whatever, Asia. But, you know, we've met with the Indian government, so that's on the cards. I've literally got an outline set up in New Zealand, like waiting for me, and I can't do. So it slowly became reality. But each of these things I want to address a world problem with. So like obviously in Africa, it's poverty. In America, it's hurricanes and fires. And, you know, overpopulation in Asia. And then obviously I wanted to crown it off with building a sustainable, recyclable net zero building. So we'll go build the build in Antarctica. So we'll go and build the building, put it up. You'll be able to sit in it, and it'll be -40 outside, and the building will be fine. And then we'll take it all down, leave no trace, and then put that unit probably in some museum somewhere.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's all on. You're all on track, you know. And that's, yeah. It's interesting, and it's weird to think that, you know, this was an idea. This was me after having such bad experience, just looking back, looking at like, what do I want to do? How do I want to do it? And then unrelenting passion and will. And this is without any of the business policies. This is just aspiration. This is just deliverables. There's a whole other side to business that is a political, geographical landscape where you have to learn and grow internally to understand how to best suit boards and partnerships. And that's a whole nother thing. And then I think as well, the consideration of mental health today.
Yeah.
One of the risks is that we stretch ourselves too thin. And I think setting goals is good, but making sure those goals are possible within your internal resources is important. And then, you know, going out there and achieving them as hard as you possibly can, but being very, very self-conscious and being aware of your surroundings.
Yeah, I think that's so true, particularly in the kind of age that we're at now. So it's a well-known fact that we've got a housing shortage in the UK. They've got what, 200,000 houses that they need to build by the end of this year, next year.
Yeah. So if we read this, I did some analysis, and this was back in 2018. But between 2008 and 2018, where they didn't deliver the numbers they promised year on year, a target, we were 1.8 million houses down.
Yeah, it's huge. It's
getting bigger. Housing crisis is a crisis because of property prices. I don't think there's who delivers them, where are they delivered without killing the green belt, and then how much they cost. I think there's a number of factors. We've got to be more forgiving. I think there's a generation that own houses that are like, yeah, but, you know, we don't want to destroy the green belt. And they're like, but what's it being used for? And you're like, yeah, but it's a green belt. I'm like, no, why don't we create massive, beautiful parks that people will walk in and respect and trust, create reserves, but build on the agricultural brownfield land that is never going to be used. But there's this hunger and need to keep the Britain. The reality of that is, though, is it's created a housing market where a young person can't buy a house anywhere south of bloody Leeds. And yet most of the population, do you know what I mean? And well, the problem is that we're making the areas we can build on smaller out of respect for our green belt. We don't identify what the green belt actually is. You know, what is a green belt? You know, it's agricultural land, but it's unused. So you get loads of plots of land all over the UK that's classified as green belt, but really it's not even doing anything. And you ask yourself, okay, well, do I want my son or daughter to be able to get access to the market. So there's a number of key questions, and I think a lot more investment into nature reserves and parks. You know, garden villages are this big mandate for Britain at the moment. It's this amazing thing. No one knows what one is. Well, you know, you need to be able to build in the green into these places. You know, when you're building apartment blocks, it is not rocket science to make the top of that park. You know, they do it in San Francisco. They do it. So I think creation of space, lifestyle space, is going to help us volumize the housing need, but it's got to be an opening up of the government and councils to say we can build it.
Yeah, I think particularly during lockdown, that open space was really needed, especially for those that don't have it. I think we do need more open space and space that is usable.
That's it, because, you know, we've got this amazing, like, it's funny thing, if you look at COVID, like, it's a prime example. If you look at the map, there's all this green space that we call the green belt. A lot, okay, yes, some of agricultural, fully understand and respect and appreciate that. But if you live in London, there's like 10 million of us. There's like 2 or 3 parks within an hour and 20-minute driving distance. So you've got these reserves, but they're pocketed, and there's still a lot of unused space. And I think, well, what would be a really good approach is for us to go out and say, okay, well, what space can actually be, what can be developed as a part of human lifestyle? What would people invest in so that they have somewhere to go, but whilst preserving all that nature, and then looking at the areas around the nature to then develop what is needed, which is human life. And it's a really tough one, because you've got to ask yourself, what's more important? Well, you know, when your kid can't afford a house, can't even afford rent, is that a bigger problem? Or is it green? And it's a really difficult one. It's a societal decision, and it's gonna, I think, with generations change. As our mindset
arguments for both sides, won't there? It's always going to be. There's never.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to jump over to a question from Gaston.
Yeah.
Says, one thing are the materials and another thing is the utilities those houses require. So what is the approach to waters and sewers? Gives the example that hotels recycle their shower water for gardens. Is there a real case?
Yeah, so it's a really, really interesting question around water and waste. So, you know, for me, the reduction is the built above unit. Okay, so everything that exists that you are actually putting together. Now, when people look at water and waste, they look at, okay, well, why can't it be independent? But if you look at that independence, the amount of materials and the amount of things that you would need to create those waste systems, every single house, doesn't really work. So then you have to look at community waste systems, and there is some community waste systems on the market at the moment. But then you have to also look at who controls the waste. You know, you cannot be a developer and just go put your own waste system in. You have to connect to a main waste central system. Water, amazing grey water ideas. The question again is that we can achieve anything. You know, I can build a house in Africa, and we can build a house in Antarctica, and I can build a house in the UK. Yes, 100% we can have a grey water waste system, but it is going to cost 10 grand to do a proper one. There's loads of them out there. Like everyone will sell you stuff, right? Everyone will be like, yeah, no, I've got a grey water system, does this. No. If you want a proper infrastructure, tank, underground, in your infrastructure, for your house, pure grey water system, plants on the walls that occupy it, you know, creating a bio life around it, it's going to be 10 or 15 grand. If the consumers are happy to pay for that, 100%, without a doubt, there is no reason we shouldn't have that. And there is no reason there shouldn't be investment into grey water systems. But again, it's that economic versus impact point. It's, you know, think about it this way. Whilst we are looking at materials made of recycled waste, while we are looking at net zero buildings and energy positive buildings, while we're looking at IoT enabled devices, if you go to any other developer that's building a building right now, they don't even have those things. And it's really like, okay, well, how far do we push the industry? I think that massive cap investment into community water, community grade water systems, community waste systems, waste to energy, these are big steps, and they will happen. But again, it's, you know, when there's not been a change for 100 years, who's going to push the boundary? Who's going to introduce it? And, you know, it's companies like us, tech companies, that have got to push those boundaries and show it works and then scale it. So
as a comparison, then what would it look like as if for a traditional install? Is it the same kind of price? Is it 10 grand or is it £1,000 or is it less? Like, is it a comparison? Can you do that?
It's a way. So when you look at a grey water system in a house, if you look at like the grey water, which is going to take, you know, your wastewater, your rainwater basically, and feed it through your whole house and put it in the top, you know, your water, your flushable water and et cetera, and potentially wash machine. you've got to consider, okay, there's one bit for materials, which has got to be effective, but then there's also the whole replumbing of the way that you would normally do it. So the way that we've got people trained right now, so we've got plumbers and we've got electrical engineers and we've got these people, they're trained to do things this way. If you introduce 7 layers of complexity to that, it's going to increase the amount of hours that's going to take. And then that becomes a labor cost because you've got to retrain people. So it's not that it's not possible, using our panel system. Well, it seems complicated and people are, but we trust bricklayers. And I'm like, yeah, but these are basically super bricks. I'll get that. Our energy pack system. Oh, whoa, hold on a minute. Is it air source heat pumps with ventilation? Oh, that's a bit, we only do boilers. And I'm like, no, literally it's easier. Look, plug this in. Or what do you mean IoT? No, I'm an electrician. I don't do that, mate. No. The IoT is simple. You literally just plug in your lights like you normally would. They're intelligent. We don't make it more complicated. So there's a trade gap process around what we can achieve and can't achieve. And then there's a cost gap process. But they can all be overcome in time without a doubt.
So is that kind of looking at the use of jargon phrases and education and trying to bridge the gap between the existing tradesman or the existing way of doing things to what we're kind of looking at now?
Yeah, it's about upskilling. It baffles me. I find it really interesting that if you look people under 20 now, probably every single person can program. They're taught that as a basic requirement. Like programming is just you learn about programming. Like that's it. It's a basic core skill now. People over the age of 25, however, they either learn it or they didn't. And I think it's a generational practice. Again, what's happened is the industry stagnated in construction so long while everything else around's got intelligent. We've got cars that drive themselves. We've got phones that you can contact anyone. We've just let these main embodiments of what we build stay the same because we don't want risk. But you'll let your car drive itself 80 miles an hour. And then they go, I won't let it do that. And I'm like, so you're smarter than a car? And they go, yeah. And I go, I didn't know that you could see 60, 80 meters ahead and behind you at the same time. Well, I can't. Well, here we go. But it might fail. Yeah, I know, but your heart might fail. Literally, no, it happens. Like the more deaths from heart failure at the driving steering wheel or people falling asleep than electric cars. So we have to ask ourselves, what risk is there? How is that risk? And then we have to implement change, and that will help us evolve. And it's that approach, this generational, like, okay, cool, it's a house, but it's a house. It's not going to fall. Does it fall down? No. Well, it's not going to be any worse than they already built. So give me something new.
Yeah, very true. I've got another question from Skander. He's asking for information on the materials that are used in different continents. So do they perform differently depending on where they're used?
Yeah, you kind of got like 3 climates in the world. You got like your humid and your arid, etc. Like there's core 3, I suppose you call them temporal zones in the world. The building system has been engineered to perform so that the moisture buildup, if you're in a humid environment or if you're in a dry arid environment, it's not reflected. What's really important about our system is the air tightness. So what people don't realize is that when you're building a building, letting the outside in isn't always about thermal. People think, if I'm building in Antarctica, I'm building in the desert, I want walls this thick so it can't get through. But what about all your joins? What about all the pieces when you put it together? They're really weak. So you may have this really thick. So our system was designed that the interlocking mechanism would create a hermetically sealed box. So it means that none of the outside air can get in unless it's mechanically changed in or you literally open a window. Now, what that means we can do is we can control the environment from outside to inside a lot better, make it a lot more healthy. You can bring in the air you want, clean it in, filter it in, and all these different mechanisms. But that also means it's universal. We built our company, our custom build company. Yes, you can get one of these guys. We're developing a custom build company so every human being can have their own building of their dreams in the future because they have to. Why should we be buying typologies that are predefined by us in cul-de-sacs? Whatever. We'll play the game for now. But yeah, so with that company, they built in North Scotland, which is still freezing, right? Below 0. We built in the desert in Africa. We're building in the Middle East. And Kuwait is literally the hottest country in the world, I believe. So just to show that diversity. But if you're looking at it from an engineering perspective, air tightness is everything and points of failure.
Yeah. Fabulous, thank you. Got a comment from Fred who says that the Green Homes deal is helping to get people interested in energy. He thinks the problem is often that people only adopt schemes if there's something in it for them, and so insensitization is really important.
Yep.
That's something that you've come across?
100%. 100%. This is the irony of it. We built a building that's like 10 times the building regulations. So it's 10 times what the government say we should build to. It's highly intelligent. You can integrate anything into it. It filters the areas you get in it. It's depending on what house you pay, you can heat it and you can cool it. It's basically net zero over its lifetime, so it doesn't kill the planet. Even though all those features existed, I had to make it the same price as affordable homes. So we actually had to go, okay, how do we do this? And we actually had to make a version of our powered by Topia, which is basically us going out to the world and letting other developers build out our technologies, net zero ready. Why? Because people don't want to pay the extra $3,000 it costs to make it energy positive. They literally don't want to go, it's $3,000 a house, and that $3,000 is the difference from it's offsetting all of its carbon. And they're like, $3,000. I'm like, yeah, but $3,000 over the next 50 years. So yeah, you're right. The good news, however, is average house UK, about 278K, whatever. We're going to use, these figures are relative, but they move every day. If you were to create a net zero house on the UK's average yearly gas and electric bill, over a mortgage life on the average UK house, you would save 14% of the house potentially. So if you saved 100% of your bills, it's like 33 grand or something. So when you look at that, if you said, okay, let's round that number real simple, we're going to save you between £1,000 and 1,200 quid a year. And it's going to make your life infinitely better. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. And you're right, the green home steel is great. It's shone a good spotlight. We're looking at retrofit applications and how we can use one of the problems is they've built these things so basic, we can't just go knock them down because again, it just creates more carbon. So you have to look at retrofits. But yeah, incentivization is key. I think bigger incentivization needs to come for developers. And unfortunately, we've got this world where developers want to build a certain way. And to get the best for the consumer, we have to get the dealerships working with us. Does that make sense? So instead of being like, here's the incentive for the consumer. Well, we know there's an incentive for the consumer. Now what our job is to do is incentivize the developer. I can make it faster. I can get you more housing access. I can get, greener. If there's potentially in the future some programs around green taxation, what happens is the developer then, instead of going, well, here's one, they pass that benefit down to thousands of consumers. So if the bigger major house builders like, well, we'll use the Topia system, they use it, they get the benefits from a business perspective, but then thousands of consumers then get that guilt-free CO2 living with no bills. Because if you ask the developer, and I think it's important to ask this, technology, hi developer, is my house technology enabled? Are you going to reduce my bills straight away? And is it going to kill the planet? And if consumers start asking developers for it, that will then provide solutions because developers will know they need to give it to their clients. But unfortunately, not consumers buy the actual house that they're buying. The developers decide what's in it. Okay. And it's re-looking at the market and saying consumers should make demand. Consumers tell people what you want. Tell your council, wait, hold on, you're telling me that we're killing the planet just because you won't change your building typology. Why? It's there, and it's down to us as consumers, down to us, the people that care, to then drive impact home. We vote. Well, let's go out in masses and vote on what we want. You know what I mean? We want greener. We want more economical. We want better standards of living. We want more practicality, and it's down to us really, because eventually they will fold. The people that are standing against it will have to accept that they're doing it for their own capitalist gain rather than for human socialist reasons.
So I think we've got time for one or two more questions. I've got one here from Stella, and she says, "Are your buildings totally finished solutions constructed offsite?"
No, we've taken a different approach. They are completely finished. So the trade gap I spoke about earlier. One of the issues with offsite building is you build it all in a factory. You then turn up and you put it on a plot. So when you buy that house, you've got like a kit, but basically your local engineer or local plumber is like, okay, cool. And he has to come out, he has to ring the company, learn from the company. So what we did as a company was like, okay, well, what if we just replaced it with super bricks? What if we made all this really simple? And then what you're able to do is you're able to use the existing trades. So what we actually do is we containerize the houses, we deliver them, and then they're put together, literally erected in panels in this super box on site, and then we plug all our technology inside it. What that means is that the developer or the builder or whoever it is that we're working, or council, whoever it is we're working with, can make it look on the outside however they want. They can decorate the inside however they want, but it's always accessible. So ours is a bit of a hybrid. It's kind of offsite, what you'd call offsite, but it's not. It's true modern method of construction, which is what they've labeled the industry. A lot of the other modern methods are methods that have been used for 200 years. So we have to ask, but yeah, for us, we're kind of like a hybrid. We wanted to make it easy as possible for other trades and other people to be able to get access to all of it.
Fabulous, thank you. Another point that's been raised about making bricks out of recycled plastic. This is apparently something that they're doing in Colombia at the moment.
Yeah, amazing. There's some amazing stuff out there. So with the climate, that brick would be specifically designed for that area, and they are amazing. Really got to be careful of the carcinogens. We don't want to go into too much because I think it's the right steps to take. We could go in all day. One of the reasons, guys, these products don't get built out of in America and the UK, you probably notice the West steer quite clear of these products or these 3D printed houses in concrete. They usually come quite CO2 intensive. However, what we can do is these emerging nations and these other countries that have more freedoms in our traditional process can incite ideas, which I think is great. So this is the first step for them, probably the plastic brick, but they've probably got ideas for a way to make it safer and better and faster. And by doing that, and I think coming together, we can jointly do it. Put it this way. The biggest house builder in the UK builds 15,000. Biggest house builder in America has built 800,000 homes. The UK has a 1.8 million deficit alone. There's 2 billion people homeless. So the more products, the better the technology is, the faster we can get access to it, the better everyone's going to be able to get access to a home, because this is like a global problem. So I think it's amazing these products are coming out of places like Colombia, and hopefully we can join forces in some way and work collaboratively.
Fab, thank you. We've got 3 minutes left, so we don't have time for any more questions. The only one that I just wanted to bring up is the last one. What's your view on cementless concrete?
Amazing. I think concrete, everyone thinks that concrete is a one-size-fits-all approach. There's an amazing company called E-Concrete that we've just been put into Unreasonable Impact with. Check them out. They're doing cedar fences, and it's an eco-concrete. I think everyone is too busy saying concrete is the solution to building everything because we understand it can build high rises, then asking what the products we should be using for that purpose are, and is it safe and is it better. So yeah, amazing. Cement's another one, the plastic one's another one. If we all keep coming up with these ideas, developing the technology to understand them, we'll be in a better position to build actually a future we want to live in, and a world that we care about, not that's being burnt alive.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for all of your insight and for answering all of the questions. There's been so much love and so much respect for you on the chat here. Fascinating. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand over to Yanis now, and he'll be able to do a wrap up, but thank you.
Thanks, Kim. And thanks, Joseph. That was wonderful. What a journey, hey? And what a cool company, and one that genuinely is changing the world, which I'd love to kind of see and hear about. One question from me to kind of end with. One killer piece of advice for entrepreneurs out there looking to kind of replicate your journey or go on a similar journey, I should say.
Don't listen to the haters. Do not listen to the haters. You use that as fuel. These people that hate you will go buy a Gucci or Louis Vuitton bag with their wages, but they won't give you a thumbs up on Facebook. So these haters, they don't hate. Trust me, they come back. So don't listen to the haters and use the haters fuel, because eventually they'll turn to you for advice. And at that point, you need to be humble. You need to respect that people are people, and turn back to them and say, you know what, actually, I'm going to give you the hand up. And then hopefully through that, we can breed some kindness, but just take that hate fuel. Let that be your fuel, man. Let hate be your fuel, and then you'll go far.
Love it. Thank you so much for that kind of final words of wisdom there. So yeah, once again, thank you to Joseph for taking his time out of his busy schedule, very busy schedule, and he's going to go to 7 continents, and he's come to Birmingham today, so we're privileged. And to Kim for hosting this session as well.